Well, welcome everybody. I'm so glad that you're here with me tonight. This evening, we're talking about the roadmap to college, what rising 8th, 9th, and 10th graders should be doing now to stand out for college later. I'm your host. My name is Ann Dolin, and for the last 25 years, my team of tutors, executive function coaches, and college consultants have been helping kids to do better in school and to get into the college of their choice. We are in luck tonight because we also have an expert in the room helping us to chart that path forward. And I want you to please meet Lisa Gastaldi. Lisa, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here tonight.
It's great to be here, Ann.
Awesome. So Lisa is a college consultant here at Educational Connections, and she has 20 years of experience as a college counselor and a school counselor, and she is national board certified. And Lisa also has a master's in counseling psychology. She's a member of NACAC, SACAC, and HECA. All of these are college organizations. So let me tell you a little about Lisa's experience. She has worked with over 4,000 students over the years, and they've attended all kinds of schools, top Ivy League schools, UVA, close to home, Duke, University of Chicago, University of California, Stanford, and UNC. But I think more importantly than all of that is she knows her work because she's visited over 500 college campuses throughout the years. So Lisa, let's talk about the parents that we have here tonight. They're here to help their kids start early. Why is starting early and even just having that conversation helpful at this age?
So these college conversations can help create goals for students in high school, and kids don't necessarily know what the college experience is. So sharing your experience with them can answer many of their questions. When I work with younger students, one of the first questions I ask them is, what do they know about college? They typically mention football, study abroad. They're worried about the food. They don't know about the roommate. How do they live with a stranger? But very rarely do students ask, about majors, career counseling, internships. But we all know that that's the goal for college, to find a marketable skill that leads to the job. So having these conversations around the subjects your child likes and what do they excel at, what activities bring them joy outside of school, is there a dream job in their mind? Talk to your child about skills and how they relate to jobs. Talking about specific jobs and the skills that are needed for those jobs can help students identify strengths and weaknesses and areas they need to work on. So I always tell my 8th, 9th, and 10th graders that just start talking to your family members, because I think that starts the process of college research, and it helps them to kind of think about their process and their needs and desires for their college education.
I like that, Lisa. I like the idea of starting the conversation early, because sometimes we hear, oh my gosh, don't talk about it. It's going to stress everybody out. But that's actually the farthest from the truth. You want to actually have that conversation early. It relieves stress, because I tell you, kids are already talking about this. They hear it from their friends. And a lot of times the information they have isn't always accurate.
Right. And I think planning ahead and talking about the process early, improves communication surrounding the process of graduation from high school and then beyond. I have some freshmen and sophomores right now that are already building their college lists and having conversations about potential majors. And as the years go on, they might change the direction, but it gives them some freedom to explore. Several of my juniors that I'm meeting with, they always start with, how do I do this? I don't know where to begin, because they're starting the process so late. It creates a lot of tension and stress for them. So starting early can empower your child to grow and develop through the process and relieve that last minute pressure about college. Also, planning ahead can help families think about the cost of college and how to finance the education. Will we be taking out loans? Do we have savings? Those type of things also are a conversation to have maybe a little bit later, but at least you can start talking about the process.
Yeah, so any conversation you can have really allows kids to have more freedom later on, because I know you work with students. We get phone calls all the time from kids that approach this at the last minute. They're juniors. Right now, we're having a lot of students come in and they've done very little, and it's incredibly difficult and stressful. Have you seen that on your end
Yeah.
with the kids that you just have coming in right now, Lisa, too?
Yeah. So my juniors have never, a lot of them haven't done any research. They haven't started their college visits. They haven't had a conversation with a college admissions officer. They haven't even looked at the website. So that's one of the things, I start directing them to our resources that we have and, kind of walk them through how do you do a college visit? Because that's something that they have never experienced before. And what questions, I'm helping students put together questions to ask of admissions also. So those things, the research, if it's done early enough, then my dream always is that they come in their senior year, midsummer, junior year, going into senior year, and they have a college list and they're ready to start the applications.
So let's kind of switch gears just a bit and talk about course selection and how important that is. Can you tell us a little bit about choosing the right courses?
Yeah, the student's transcript is one of the major things that colleges are looking at. So the transcript, for those of you who have never seen a transcript, it includes all the courses and grades that it gets sent to the universities. And I've always had students say to me, freshman and sophomore year don't really count, do they? Well, they do. All 4 years do count. There's a cumulative GPA on most transcripts. Colleges will look for progression on the transcript. If we started slowly and then, picked up their coursework and started taking more honors and AP courses. That's what really colleges are hoping that students will do. And high school graduation requirements are typically are just minimum requirements. So students planning to go to college need to understand that they should be taking higher level courses and maybe try some APs, try some honors. The college admissions officers want to see a solid foundation of learning. And they look mainly at the core classes, which core means the English, math, science, social studies, and foreign language. Students should take a minimum of 5 solid academic classes per semester. The grades a student earns in these courses is so important for students to ready themselves for college level work. AP, IB courses, honors courses, those are all things that they should take into consider if they're able. And maybe potentially thrown in a community college class, that's an option also. So I think talking to your students about what academic areas are interesting to them, what subjects do they excel in? So if math and science are their strength, then they should plan to take those every year in high school. And typically colleges want to see at least 3 years of a foreign language, and most high schools only might require 2 years. So it's important to know the graduation requirements, but also know that colleges are looking for students to do a bit more than just the regular graduation requirements. And then if students are interested in playing sports, they also have, NCAA has some strict requirements on what students should take to make sure that they're eligible also.
Lisa, one of the questions that came in when we were starting was about the importance of AP classes. And Barbara said, that it's kind of like a trend now for kids to load up on AP classes when they're really young and take as many as they can. Maybe not load up, but take as many as they can where they're 9th and 10th graders. What do you think about that approach, or does it really depend on the student and their capacity?
Yeah, I do think it depends on what the student enjoys and is good at. I wouldn't encourage a student who's not good in, certain areas to take an AP course. They might try the honors course. But again, it's one of those things, each student's going to be different. I would say that, trying to stretch yourself a bit is what the colleges are looking for. So try an honors course, try an AP course, or if your school has IB, that's also something to maybe try.
Yeah, sometimes parents will say, is it better to take an honors course or a regular course and get an A, or an AP course and get a B?
Well, I think that, the AP is a national curriculum. So we know that, that students are wanting to try these AP courses because everyone else is taking them, but I think that they have to kind of stay in their lane.
Mm-hmm. for sure. All right. So let's switch gears again and now talk a little bit about testing, because this has changed a lot over the last few years. And one of the reasons we're seeing just such an onslaught of applications for top tier colleges is that, before the pandemic, many of these schools required students to submit test scores. And now most schools are test optional. So kids can submit test scores if they want, but they're not required at most schools. Some still require. And so that for that reason, kids are throwing their hat into the ring of colleges that they would not have applied to in the past. And that's why we're seeing the nature of top universities, way more competitive than ever before. And, although many colleges are test optional, and in Virginia, all the public universities are, it's not the same in every state, not in Georgia, not in Florida, but it starts with the PSAT. So tell us about the PSAT and the importance of it, Lisa.
So the PSAT is typically taken in October. Most schools will offer, all schools should offer it to their juniors, but some schools might offer it to their freshmen and sophomores. So my theory is that if more times you take it, the easier it gets. So if your school offers the PSAT in October, I would definitely jump on board and do that. It becomes real in the 11th grade when students become eligible for the National Merit Scholarship, and then they're also preparing for the real SAT, which most students take in the 11th grade year. So this exam is designed to prepare students for the SAT and to gauge their college readiness. It tests math, reading, and writing abilities, and it will be digital in the fall.
Yes, and that is the big news, is that the PSAT and the SAT are digital, or will be digital. The fall for the PSAT of this year and the spring of next year for students taking the SAT. And let me just share quickly about some of the differences, because parents have found this to be a little bit confusing. What is going on? Well, let's start with what's staying the same. So there's still a 1,600 point scale. You get 800 points for evidence-based reading and writing and 800 points for math. And that would be a perfect score. The exam is still proctored at school. It's not like, because it's digital, kids can get up out of bed and, flip over their covers and just start taking the test. They still go to a proctored site at their school, and they can use their laptop, or if they don't have one, the school will provide a laptop for them. If your child has an IEP or a 504, they still get accommodations, just like before. And it is generally the same subject matter. So what's being tested really isn't all that different. But here's what's changing. Obviously, no pencils and papers. It's digital and it's shorter. So instead of 3 hours, it's now 2 hours. And that just feels a lot more approachable to kids. And the way that they're doing this is they're taking many of there's long passages and short passages. They're really getting rid of those really long passages, and they're making everything short. And just by doing that, they're shaving off time for the test. Also, right now, there's a calculator section and a no calculator section, which kids hate, by the way. Even though they really don't have to use a calculator, they still just want it with them. And that's going away. So now everything is all calculator. And what's interesting is it's adaptive. So right now, everybody gets the same types of questions, even though they may have a different test. But with the adapted version, it changes with your answer, so that what everybody experiences is a little bit differently. It's also going to be offered more frequently, which I love. And instead of waiting 2 weeks, generally, which is what you have to wait for right now to get your scores, you're going to get your scores back in just a couple of days. And that is really wonderful. So, kids are thinking and families are thinking, well, after my child takes the PSAT, what should we do? We talked about the SAT. That's only one of the tests. Or should they practice for the ACT, or should they skip everything totally? They're kind of like at this fork in the road, and what should they do? Lisa, your thoughts on still taking a test or not taking a test?
So, and going back to, you mentioned the pre-ACT, which is the which is offered also at some schools. So if students have the ability to take the PSAT and the pre-ACT, I would highly recommend that. As far as the real deal, the real SAT and the real ACT, I recommend that students take it. They don't have to send it anywhere. The college landscape is always changing, and by the time your 8th grader is a junior, going to be applying to college their senior year, some schools may go back to the testing. So I think that to have those tests, and I'm encouraging my juniors right now to to register the June test, because if they are not happy with their scores their junior year, they have some time over the senior year to do some, over the junior summer, to do some prep and to, try to improve those scores. And then there's time their senior year to end up taking it again. So I do recommend that kids take it and then make the decision. Typically, when I'm working with students in the application process, we do look at some of those average SAT, ACT, and see where their scores fall. And then we make a decision. Do we send it to the school? When you're applying to some of to schools, you can choose whether you send it to this school and not this school. So you don't have to blanket send it to every school. Another thing also that I've seen is that students that have potentially run into something that's gone wrong in their school, whether they've broken their leg in sports or got mono or COVID, and they miss some school and they have a bad semester. If their SAT or ACT score is really good, it can kind of make up for some of the hardship that they went through during that bad semester. I do think that colleges, if you send it, they do definitely look at it, and if it's good enough, I would definitely send it to some of the schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to kind of give a frame of reference in terms of timing, if you have an 8th, 9th, or 10th grader, a rising 8th, 9th, or 10th grade, they don't need to think about this right now. So generally what happens is when kids are at the end of their 10th grade year, the summer before their junior year, they'll generally we offer practice tests on weekends. They're virtual, they're live proctored, and students can take those at their house. And that's a good way for us to see, how are they doing on this test? It allows us to see which test they score best on. And really, because every college in the country will take both tests, you really only have to prepare for one. So nothing needs to be done now until usually the summer before the junior year. And kids will take a practice test, see how they do, and then prep for the actual test. Generally speaking, and what statistics show is that students get their best score in the spring of their junior year. And we've seen over the last few years this emphasis on testing really early, and that can be helpful, especially if your child's in a competitive sport and they don't have a lot of time in the spring. But in general, most kids will perform their best not until the spring of their junior year. So again, we recommend that kids sit for it and take it. And, again, we don't know what's going to happen in a few years when their time does come around. All right. So we talked about grades and course selection. We talked about testing. There are other things that kids can be doing now when they're younger to build their resumes. Lisa, what about extracurriculars and hobbies? How do they come in?
Yes. So extracurriculars are important on the college application, but they cannot substitute for good grades and solid test scores if the student has it. So I would call it a soft factor. It's important that students understand that they don't have to do 100 things. They can do 2 or 3 things really well, and pursuing some meaning with their extracurriculars. So what colleges are looking for is that a student has some drive, commitment, time management, and talent. And potentially some outside interests. So what counts as extracurricular? And it really can be anything. It can be working part-time. I've had students who have cared for a family member and written that on their application. Volunteering. I've had students who have created their own business, whether that be dog walking or creating flies. So sometimes students sell their art online. I mean, these are all things that I have seen in the years that I've been doing this. So students that are, into music and do French club, do jazz band, they can, those are things also that count as extracurriculars. So any kind of athletic team is also an extracurricular. So picking 2 or 3 things that are meaningful, I think, is the way to go. So it's quality versus quantity. And I think students need to consider things when they're doing extracurriculars. Will this help build my character? Will it expand my intellect? Is there meaning around it? And do I really care about it? One of my pet peeves is when a student just does an activity to do an activity. They're not getting anything out of it. And probably if it's a volunteer situation, the volunteer thing they're not getting anything out of it. So I think that having purpose in those activities is key. What I also tell my students is keep a resume. So keep a list, you don't even have to have a resume. Just keep a list of all the things that you do, because when you get to be a junior, you might forget what you've done your freshman year. So anything that takes up time is considered a good activity.
Thanks for that, Lisa. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning, I have a QR code in the bottom left of each slide, and that's Lisa's calendar. So if something hits home for you, or you would like to set up a call to talk about Lisa helping your child, just scan that QR code. So Lisa, that kind of leads us to passions. Passions are really where it's at now. I remember when I was in high school, at the 11th hour, I ran around and signed up for like 4 different clubs, even though because my parents were yelling at me, you don't have anything to write about. And so I was here, there, and everywhere. But that's not how it is anymore. Like you said, kids don't have to be everything to everyone, but they do need to have something that they enjoy doing. Can you tell us a little bit about passions?
Yes. So colleges are looking for students who really get excited by something, anything, and actually pursue that interest in some way. Colleges want students who are going to come to their campuses and actually participate in their education, not just sit back and let it come to them. So students with passion bring enthusiasm to the campuses. And so that can come out in some of the activities. I tell students to keep a running list of things that excite them. How do they spend their free time? And then look for some common themes in these interests. I have a student that looked around his school and found that their mental health support was not there at the school. So his school happened to be one of the IB schools that I mentioned earlier. And the students were really struggling. So he teamed up with the counseling department. He took initiative, teamed up with the counseling department, started a mental health awareness club. They did not have one on campus. He found community resources to bring in for school for a mental health fair. And he even brought in therapy dogs around final exam. And he had speakers come in to discuss how to handle stress. And the school even implemented a yoga class. So it's all about, seeing something around you that maybe you want to make an impact, or you have a passion for. The student's definitely going to study psychology when he gets to college. So.
And some kids, Lisa, aren't sure what their passion is. That was the case with my son. He kind of did a lot of everything, but nothing like particularly deeply. But he did have this little side hobby of making videos. And so he decided to delve more into that. And he took a class at George Mason over the summer. You can start your own business in Fairfax County for $25 and get a business license. And so it may not be something that kids are like, oh my gosh, I have to do this the rest of my life. It could be something that they just kind of enjoy doing, and they can add a little bit to that. But what I love is, a lot of times kids come to us and they'll say, well, there's nothing special about me. There's nothing I'm like really amazing at, but you always manage to tease that out of them. And one of the ways is through our AchieveWorks assessment.
Yes. So when with our college advising services, we offer students the chance to take 4 assessments. And I would say probably 80% of my kids do it, which is amazing. And their parents will sit in on the assessments, and it's a lot of fun, because the parents will kind of say, I knew that all along about you, or whatever. So but the assessments are personality, learning and productivity, intelligence, and a skills assessment. So there are 4 different ones. We The student takes the assessment, and then we show them the results, and we talk with them about potential career paths. Personalities also were fun to talk about, and then they can understand what their skill set is. So the students end up doing kind of a deeper dive into college majors after we do the assessment, and those might lead to a career. The assessments also show us real jobs. So, students sometimes have a preconceived notion about what they want to do, but then when they see the job description, they're like, "Oh, that doesn't sound very fun." So the assessments are tied to job websites. So we can also look at labor market information, average salaries, and then related jobs and descriptions. So.
And Lisa, doing this on the earlier side can really help kids to, if they have a penchant, say for math, like Mark, and for science, it can kind of help them see that, oh, this might be something I want to do. And Mark was a student of yours, still is actually, but he started early on in 9th grade. Can you tell us a little bit about Mark and how you helped him?
Yeah, these case studies are really what can be possible. There are students, these are all our students I've worked with, but sometimes there is always a change of plans, so I want parents to kind of think about, students are very flexible. But these particular students have a plan, but there's always room to change your mind. Yes, so Mark is a rising 11th grader. I've been working with him for a year. He knew that he wanted to be in medicine. His mom is a physician and his dad works in the biomedical industry. He's been taking honors courses in both in 9th and 10th grade in biology and chemistry, as well as honors math. And next year, as a junior, he is going to take AP biology. And we kind of talked about, should he take AP chemistry or AP biology? His senior year, he'll probably take another AP, whether that be AP physics or AP chemistry. He's taking pre-calculus and AP English. And he's also doing an elective in sports medicine because he wanted some exposure to sports medicine. So he's working with the athletic teams. And there's actually a course at his school that is called sports medicine. So that's kind of a nice elective to take that kind of coincides with the medical piece. His school has a pre-med club at school, and he's been taking an active part in the pre-med club and bringing in speakers, and also helping students through his mom find some job shadows. And he does volunteer with the sports teams, and he has done one job shadow with an orthopedic doctor who's a family friend. So his mom found a friend who happens to be working with some athletes. His thought is that next summer, going into his senior year, he's probably going to do a summer. We looked at summer programs, and he's going to probably do one at UPenn. He looked at one in neuroscience. So he's thinking about next summer already.
Awesome. Let's talk about Kelly. She's a rising 10th grader.
Yes, Kelly. She is interested in business, and she's a rising 10th. So she's just finishing her 9th grade. And how does a kid that's going into 10th grade already know she's going to be in business? Well, she took a babysitting course this year and decided that she was going to start her own babysitting class, own babysitting company. So she distributed flyers in her neighborhood. She got CPR and first aid training. She is going to be taking honors math and English next year. And she's also going to be taking some marketing courses and business electives at her high school. One thing she did do this year that I think kind of solidified the business is she joined a club at school. It's called DECA. And this is a project management type school, and it's sponsored by the school. But we also looked at some summer programs, and she's thinking about doing a summer next year. It's called Economics for Leaders. So I think she's going to continue with the business. She's got that personality. So
I love that. That's awesome. And then what about Gabrielle?
So she's a rising 10th grader, and she was one of those kids that was like, I have no idea what I want to do. So we did do the assessments. She took the two assessments, I believe, this year. And it kind of pointed her in the direction of politics or law. So next year, she's going to try an AP course. She's going to take AP World History, which is offered at her school, and an honors English course. She's been doing Key Club, which is a volunteer service program at her school. But next year, she wants to try Youth in Government, which is a program at her school that you actually compete with, you do government and politics, and you compete using cases and attorneys and judges. It's a regional and national program. And she wants to job shadow her dad's friend. We talked about job shadowing, and he's a lawyer. So she's going to maybe see if she can get involved in some elections and political campaigns. Now, I want to say this, that Gabrielle's mind might change, but right now that's kind of what she's looking at. And she might do something at Georgetown University next summer. So we're already starting the process of looking at summer programs for next year.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk about the timeline. When should kids start thinking about college and researching colleges?
Well, if we go back to my dream of everyone having their college list, it would be right now. So, there's so much information on the web, but kids are always like, what do I look for? I don't have any idea what I'm supposed to be doing. So these are questions that I hear all the time. So the possibilities are just, they have to understand what college is before they can pick a college. So I think that what we end up doing is we end up looking at some of the schools. We look at College Planner Pro and the FIS guides, which, if you've heard of the FIS guides, I talked to the students about what the FIS guides are. And then we try to figure out if the college is going to fit academically and financially and socially. They don't know the differences between college. There are liberal arts colleges, there are technical institutes, there's historically Black colleges, there's women's colleges. So we talk about the difference, what happens when you look at college. And so we do look at the size of the college, location, majors, and campus life, all the things that you need to do to start looking. So it's doing the research is just the start, and then creating and the list always ebbs and flows. I mean, even my juniors, I'm like, we might find a school that you really like and take it off before the end of the summer. Depends on if they end up going to visit. There are virtual visits available online. So a lot of my students that can't travel or don't have time to travel can do virtual visits. There are college fairs that happen in the fall. There was just a big one this spring, and typically they happen in the spring and the fall. And so, how I help my students, like, how do I do a college fair? Because it can be overwhelming. So we kind of talk about questions to ask. What types of things should I do at a college fair? They have no idea that they have to maybe take some initiative and maybe go talk to somebody. So, some high schools, college reps actually come to the schools. So starting to talk to those college reps early, you get a feel for what the school is all about. So yes.
I know there's also a lot of great resources out there for kids too.
Yes, I use Road Trip Nation, which is that's more for career, but it is a career video series for students to watch. It's real people talking about real careers. And then Big Future is a College Board product that helps with research. And the Colleges That Change Lives, it's a book, but it's also a website. And it's probably colleges you've never heard of, but they're pretty amazing schools. And, kind of the experiences that kids have had at those particular schools. And then we also put up the NCAA Eligibility Center if you have a student athlete that's interested in playing sports in college.
Awesome. And I love Colleges That Change Lives. I remember, I think as parents too, we think about big name schools, and kind of to your point that kids often say, like, I want a school with a football team, when that's not so important, but they think of things that maybe are important when they're in ninth grade, but maybe down the road, not so much. And I love this book because it kind of takes your mind out of oh, I need to have this school. And you look at all the possibilities, and they're never what you think that they are. So I
Yes.
highly recommend it.
And I do not like the rankings, and I'll be perfectly honest with you. I don't like the World News and Report rankings for colleges. So
Yeah, this is like the anti-approach to that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And there are so many colleges out there, Lisa. It's not just the ones that we hear about all the time. And I think there's 2,000 four-year universities. Is that correct?
I think there's more than that. I think there's almost 4,000. I think it's double that. Yeah.
So it's a lot. And there is something for everybody, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I do think that kids think that there's one specific college that's going to fit for them, but there isn't. You know, you have to, when you think of fit for students, it has to do with, can I get in, can I afford it, and can I be happy there? So those are the three things I think about with fit. So you have to really kind of think about what you are looking for in a college. You know, if you're looking for football, make sure you find a school with football. If you're looking for diversity, or there's so many different aspects of college that fit for students. How does a student learn best? Do they like large lecture style or smaller class sizes? These are questions that I always ask. How much structure do you need in your learning, and what extracurriculars would you be happy with? And then, what have I learned about my academic interests and abilities that will influence what I might study in college? So these are all questions that I typically ask my kids when I'm working with them.
And we've broken it down for you. So whether you have a child who is coming up to 9th grade, they're a rising 10th grader, or rising 11th, or even a rising 12th, we put together a college prep checklist for each grade so that you can see, even if you have a younger student, what you should be doing or thinking about in each grade. And you can get that straight to your inbox by texting 55444 in the word college, and we'll send it to you. We won't text you anything else, but it's an easy way for us to get it to you. And it will come straight to your inbox. So if hearing all of this, hopefully it solves some problems for you and some questions that you had in your mind. And we're going to go to the Q&A in just a second. So if you have a question, feel free to put it into the chat. But if you're still thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure about this, we can help you. And we have programs specifically for rising 8th graders, rising 9th graders, rising 10th graders. We have a separate program for rising 11th graders. And right now, we have students in our Senior Express program. So that's a little bit condensed so that they can get everything done by the fall and to apply to schools, either early action, early decision, or a little bit later at regular decision. And then I want to share our next webinar with you. It's on June 12th at 7 o'clock, and it's with our other college consultant, Kristen Landis. And it's specifically about rising juniors, what they should be doing now to stand up from the competition, stand out from the competition. All right, so we're going to go to Q&A in just a second. And by the way, after we're done, a survey will pop up on your screen. And if you would be so kind to take that survey, tell us what was helpful to you or what wasn't, so that we can perfect things for future webinars. All right, so Lisa, thank you so much for sharing everything with us. Let me take a look at the chat and see what we have here. Let's see. I think, Barbara, we talked about AP classes and how schools view those. And really, I think the takeaway message is if your child's capable of keeping up with the work in AP courses, especially in areas that he or she enjoys, that's a great avenue, because colleges will look to see, did you challenge yourself as much as possible? The more competitive classes. So APs are a good direction to take without feeling completely overwhelmed. That's for sure. Let's see. Karen asks, for a rising 10th grader, is getting a summer job or volunteering better for her student? What do you think, Lisa?
Well, I don't know her student, but it depends on which one is more interesting, I think. And are they going to continue with the job in the fall, or are they going to just work for the summer? Or is it a volunteer situation where they can do year round? So what colleges are looking for is longevity and commitment. So if it's something that, a volunteer service is only once or twice a week for the summer, I wouldn't do it. If it's something that's pretty substantial and the student likes it, I would definitely do a volunteer service. Sometimes those can, show a student a different direction than just maybe scooping ice cream. So.
Okay. Let's see. Here's another question that came through email. If a student has an exceptional gift, say in music, to the extent that the student is performing at a professional level with adults in the classical field, but not necessarily going to make a career of this, how would universities look at this, and how do we present this to a college on the student's college application as an advantage, even though they may not want to go in that direction in their career?
So there are there are conservatories out there. So conservatories are music or theater or art or based, which means that that's all they take. So students that are in conservatories wouldn't take English, they wouldn't take math. So for a student like this, I would recommend to do not a conservatory, but to go to, I guess you would just call it a regular college with a music program. If they wanted to double major, potentially they could do that. I have a piano player right now that is doing very similar things, but does not want to major in piano. But he wants the ability to practice the piano. And so we have to find a college that has the major that he's looking for, potentially a minor in some kind of musical performance if he wants to do that, but also access to a piano. So there are all these little kind of things that you kind of have to think about. I will say that if this musician decided he wanted to go into music, then there would be an audition situation along with the application. Just like with art students, there's portfolios. So with music students, there are auditions that they have to do and an arts supplement. So it's a little bit more intense than just, applying for a major. So.
Okay. We have another parent that asked about testing, and she said tests are a concern for her child because of a lot of anxiety. The student is homeschooled, so they're really hoping to avoid college entrance exams. Is there an alternative? And certainly, there's a lot of kids out there like this that they're just not great test takers, but they might be good students. And you don't have to take any test at all. You can apply completely test optional. But still, I might recommend it. I might recommend that your child just get a test score on the books, because, ideally the students list is going to have, schools that are, I would say, a little bit easier to get into. Sometimes we call them safety schools, middle of the road, where it could go either way. These are like framework schools, or target schools, I guess I should say. And then there's reach schools. So oftentimes kids may not have a fabulous test score for these reach schools or even these middle of the road schools, but that test score might be really great for those safety schools. So the test score might still be able to be used. And again, we don't know what it's going to look like in the future. So you don't have to take a test at all. And you just make sure you only apply to schools that don't need a test. But it's not such a bad thing if your child sits and just takes one test. And somebody else asked, will schools see that you've taken the test multiple times? And the answer is schools will look at even if they see multiple scores, but you own your data. You don't have to send all your scores. But typically what schools will do is they'll just cherry pick your highest score, or they'll pick your highest score from one test and your higher score from another test and put them together. And they'll super score. And so the software does that automatically. So that also helps them because it makes it look like their scores are really great. And that's where you often see like, wow, these kids are scoring really well. And it's because those scores are super scored. And, they're only kids that have good scores are really submitting them these days. So you own your data at the end of the day. Somebody else asked if the colleges will know which lane you are in for adaptive testing, and they won't. They will just see the score. Okay, so one other question about volunteering, Lisa. Should kids start documenting items starting in the 9th grade, the 7th grade? When you fill out that form on your application where it has 10 spots, can you put stuff down from 7th grade, or are these all high school and above?
It's only 9th grade and above. I hate to say that, like you didn't exist before the 9th grade. You can put things from the 9th grade summer, but nothing in 7th or 8th grade as far as the applications are concerned. Now, I have had students who have been like Girl Scouts, and so they have done Girl Scouts their whole life, and then they've gotten to the highest level of Girl Scouts, but they have counted those years because it's a continual event. It's a continual activity.
Okay, let's see. What's the best way to find out about the academic strength of a college, especially if, we know that relying on rankings isn't a great idea?
Okay, so I use acceptance rates is how I look at it with my students. And so when we're putting together the list, I like to have a list of a few reach schools. So with the acceptance rates from anywhere from 1%, the Ivy Leagues, to probably around 30%, that would be like a reach situation. The second acceptance rate is probably around 40% to, depending on the students, curriculum and activities and testing if they're going to submit it. But the acceptance rates from probably 45% to 70%, 75% are those kind of target schools for most students. And then anything over 80% acceptance rate would be what we call the likely school, or safety. So we try to put together a mixed list and want the student to be happy anywhere they get in, not just the highly competitive school.
Okay, great. Somebody asked, how do I get the checklist? And just text the number 55444 and type in the word college, and it will come to your inbox. Julie said, what are your thoughts about dual enrollment programs? Like in Montgomery County, a high schooler may take college courses at a community college while still in high school. Is it worth it? Your thoughts, Lisa?
So, it depends on where they are thinking about applying, I think, for this question, because, I think the AP curriculum and IB curriculum, somebody asked what the IB curriculum was. It's International Baccalaureate. And so that's for US schools and international schools. But those type of curriculums, the colleges know what the student has studied, and there is a test after each course, and so if the student's going to earn the credit, then they will have to score a certain amount on the test. Not all colleges in the United States may know the dual enrollment program at your particular college. They will look at it and give it college credit immediately. So, but again, it's one of those things where, in my opinion, the AP IB curriculum is probably more rigorous than the dual enrollment.
One parent asks, is there any data that suggests whether having an IEP or a 504 negatively or positively impact college acceptance rate?
It's up to this. So I've had both ends. So I've had a student who did not want to disclose anything in the application about the IEP, but I tried to encourage them to disclose, because you want to make sure that the college is able to handle the accommodations that you are requiring. And if they don't know that you're on these particular accommodations, then that could be a problem. So I encourage my students to disclose, but I don't have any data whatsoever on it helps you get into college or detracts from getting you into college.
And that's also a common question we get from kids that are a little bit older, they're juniors or seniors. They often wonder, should I, ADHD, for example, has been a part of my life. It's something that I've been able to work around. I've used it to my advantage. Should I write my essay on that, or would that be looked upon negatively? And the answer is, if that's a part of your life and you've overcome obstacles in your way, It's who you are. It's a wonderful thing to write about. Have you had kids that have been in that boat, Lisa?
Yes, I always tell them that we have to put if they write their personal statement on it, it has to have end up with a positive spin. So not one that's like, this is my problem and it's always been my problem. It's like, this is what I've learned about myself with this ADHD or with this learning disability. Yeah.
Carol asks, how many AP classes should my child take? And I know this is a mixed bag, but what are you thinking?
Oh, I get this question all the time. And it's a hard question to answer because some schools offer 12, and some schools may offer only 5. It depends on the school. So what the colleges will do is they will look at the curriculum from your particular school. There's a school profile that gets sent with every transcript when the student applies, and they will see how many AP courses that the student could have taken, and they do rank students from the particular school. If you have like a big popular school that all of the kids are applying to, you are competing against the students within your own school. So I don't know. I would say stick with what your passions are. Like, don't try to take a course that is not going to work out well.
And we've had kids that have taken no AP classes their whole college career, and we've had kids that have taken 12. So you just have to know that this will not break you. If you are heavy on AP classes, that you can handle it and you can still have a life outside of school.
I also think that just one more thing, Anne, sorry, that you have to understand that most of the students applying to some of these Ivy Leagues, UVA, they are taking a lot of AP courses. So that is the population that you're competing against. So if you are looking at those particular courses, understand that that's your population.
Yeah.
That's why I try to find the right fit for the student with college planning, not just applying to schools. So
yeah, for sure. And to Ash's point, she said, some schools don't offer APs; they just have honors. Especially, there are many private schools that are very elite private schools, and they've done away with APs altogether. And really going back to what Lisa said, that the person reviewing your school doesn't review, just a couple of kids. It's the same admissions director who reviews all the applications for your school. So that school profile that Lisa talked about, it doesn't put your student at a disadvantage because the reviewer knows about your school profile and they understand that there are substitutes for an AP curriculum at that school. Susan asked, when should your child get an SAT tutor? And it really depends on when they're looking to take the test, but generally about 3, sometimes 4 months out is a good amount of time. So most kids that we prep will start preparing the summer before their junior year or the fall of their junior year, and sometimes as late as, January, because they're going to take a spring test. Adrian says, I see a lot of kids applying to colleges with specific majors. So they're applying already with a major. What if my child doesn't have an identified major when applying to college?
So, and I've had plenty of these. You can apply to college undeclared, or you can apply to the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and be general. Sometimes when a student picks a major, there is a supplemental question that says, why are you picking this major? So I have a conversation with the student, if you're picking undeclared, we have to have a plan about potentially what could be your major. But yeah, students can do undeclared at most colleges. I'll say most, not all.
Chris says, what about using Naviance to make your list?
So many schools use Naviance, or SCORE is another one. Yeah, that is one of those research platforms. Like we use College Planner Pro at Education Connections, which is, in my mind, a better tool than Naviance, but Naviance does the job, and you can do college searches on there as well.
Mara says, my son's interested in going to an international college. Are the application requirements the same?
Depends. So it depends where he's thinking about going. So the United Kingdom has its own application called the UCAS application, which is the common app in the United Kingdom. And so but some schools in the United Kingdom are on the Common App. So it could be the same. It depends on the school. So, for example, St. Andrews is on the Common App in Scotland, but other schools like, I'm trying to think of one that is not, but Sussex might not be on there. So you may have to, if you're thinking about, and I'm working with a student that's doing both, she's got her Common App going and her international application going at the same time. And so it's a little overwhelming to do that, but she's ready. So.
Awesome. That sounds very exciting. Karen says, if you really hate a foreign language but get Bs, should you take it your third year?
Some colleges require 3 years of a foreign language. So if you have to do the research. So if you're looking at schools, I would maybe go on the college website, or even in Naviance, it also tells you, if your school uses Naviance, how many years of a foreign language is required.
And there's also a difference between required and competitive too.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And what are you substituting? If you're not doing the foreign language, what course is going in its place? Because the colleges want to see a rigorous schedule that's considered a core class foreign language. So I always tell kids, you can't put fluff into your schedule. You have to have a rigorous course if you're taking out the foreign language.
No more fluff. Okay, got it. And then our last question is from Gloria. If the student isn't in a public school, who are they competing for admissions? I'm not sure what she means. Maybe a homeschooled student?
Well, the homeschool is a whole other ball of wax, depending on which, if they have a portfolio, or are they being sponsored by a accreditation process. So if they are a homeschool student, they are considered their own student. Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. And those are all the questions we have tonight, and we're right on time. It's just about 8 o'clock. So thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us and for lending your expertise on such an important topic. And parents, I hope this makes your journey through the application process as your child gets older just a little bit easier. So thank you. It was a pleasure to speak to all of you tonight. Again, feel free to reach out to us if we can be of help. Have a great evening, everybody, and bye-bye.